Hello, fight fans, and welcome to another edition of Monday Night Fight Talk. As always, I am your host, Dylan Brewski. Very excited to be with you today. We just had a very fun fight night headline, which was the headliner wasn't as much fun because of an injury to one of our fighters. That's never fun to see, especially considering this is the fourth of this year. There has been 13 UFC main events that have been stopped early due to injury, so TKO technically. 4 of them have been this year alone. Very tough to see. Hopefully Calvin Kattar can recover quickly. I will take a deeper dive into it later, but that was unfortunate. So we will also be covering a possible Petr Yan exit from the UFC after his controversial decision loss to Sean O'Malley a couple weeks ago. Also going to be talking about Bellator versus Rizin, the event that, Rizin, that is scheduled to take place on New Year's Eve. Very exciting event. Can't wait to see that one. And also giving a few predictions for UFC Fight Night taking place next Saturday. For Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos will be headlining that one. But first, let's talk about 3 of the fights that took place just a couple days ago at UFC Fight Night. Kattar versus Allen. Starting off with Dustin Jacoby taking on Khalil Rountree. The outcome of this fight was the exact reason why I didn't think it was a very smart decision for Dustin Jacoby to take this fight in the first place. Khalil Rountree is one of the most dangerous fighters on the planet. He has incredible power that we maybe have never seen before. That's the power this guy possesses. Now, I will say I do believe Dustin Jacoby won this fight. I get where a couple of the judges came from. With Khalil Rountree, he punches so hard, he kicks so hard that every single strike looks to be just this scary, devastating blow. But Dustin Jacoby almost doubled the amount of strikes that Khalil Rountree landed. And this fight was close. I will admit it. I wouldn't say this was like a highway robbery. I do think it was more of a robbery than Petr Yan and Sean O'Malley. But at the same time, it's just like you can't. All 3 judges have different scorecards. That's what we're talking about with this fight. This fight was just weird. And the judging just seemed a bit off. I'm going to be talking about the co-main event here in a second, where there was also some odd judging scores on that one as well. But this one, I don't really see how you give the fight to Khalil Rountree, except you're just taking in the punishment. Because Dustin Jacoby was kind of bloodied at the end of the fight. He did look like he took more damage. But man, it just sucks to see a guy land almost double the amount of strikes and get a loss on his record. Especially a fight that was such a high-risk, low-reward fight for Dustin Jacoby. Again, I don't think he should have accepted this fight. He should have been looking at people in the rankings to fight, not someone outside of the rankings, especially as dangerous as Khalil Rountree. This was overall, it was a fun fight, don't get me wrong, but it does suck to see a fight like that end up with the wrong outcome per se, at least in my eyes. So very unfortunate for Dustin Jacoby, but congratulations to Khalil Rountree. This is probably the biggest one of his career. He may even be looking at a ranking near his name very, very soon, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. But next fight is the co-main event. Tim Means taking on Max Grishin, 2 just gritty veterans. The biggest reason I wanted to talk about this fight, other than the sort of controversial, because it didn't end up being a big factor at the end of the day, but controversial decision. But also, Max Grishin is just very, very impressive. He's always willing to take fights against these gritty veterans. I mean, we're talking about his last 3 fights, a win over Carlos Condit, a loss by the skin of his teeth against Neil Magny, one of the best fighters that we've seen in this company. I mean, he's always around. He's always there. He's fighting next week, and I'll be talking about his fight later on. And then this split decision victory over Tim Means. The reason I put the quotation around split decision is when you go back and look at the decision announcement, even Tim Means himself is looking around like, who scored that fight for me? He was confused about why the judges scored the fight for himself. I don't think that by any means was a split decision. I thought Max Grishin clearly won the fight. I mean, it wasn't like a lopsided domination, but Max Grishin did more than enough to win that fight. A lot more than Tim Means did. So just a little weird decision, but at the end of the day, 2 of the judges got it right. They got Max Grishin winning this fight. So that's really all that matters. And now for the unfortunate main event ending. This really sucks to see. You never like to see fighters get injured, especially just with Calvin Kattar. I mean, he's tough as nails. Calvin Kattar does not get finished. This was his 30th professional MMA bout. That was the first time, technically, that he's been finished. He had never been finished. So basically, an injury to himself was what caused the first finish of his career. So very unfortunate for him. We all know Calvin Kattar, one of the top contenders in this featherweight division, kind of playing the gatekeeper role as of recent. But he's been putting on some great fights. A very close decision where the judges just didn't see it for him against Josh Emmett. He lost to Max Holloway. Almost everybody loses to Max Holloway. He beats Giga Chikadze in a total domination at the beginning of this year. And then to see him, a big fight against Arnold Allen, who it also sucks for Arnold Allen as well. Because, I mean, right before the fight even started, Alexander Volkanovski, the champion of this division, said he's looking for someone to make a statement. He wants a clear number 1 contender. And with this injury to Calvin Kattar, it kind of takes away that clear number 1 contender, because now you're sitting here, you have 3 guys who all have pretty good cases to be the number 1 contender. You have Yair Rodriguez, who has granted, it was another one of those injury wins, an injury TKO over Brian Ortega. You have Josh Emmett, a controversial decision win over Calvin Kattar earlier this year. And now you have Arnold Allen, who gets the injury TKO over Calvin Kattar. So all these guys, these 3 guys are just kind of sitting in the same exact spot, and no one really knows what to do from here. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what they do with these 3 guys, especially with the fact that Alexander Volkanovski's moving up. Volk's going up to lightweight to fight Islam probably in February in Australia. So one thing I could see, I saw someone tweet 2 of these fights. I cannot remember their Twitter handle. I do apologize for that. But this was not my idea. I'll put that out there. It was not my idea for this. But I'm actually going to add another fight to this mix. So the 2 fights that would kind of mean more would be Arnold Allen versus Yair Rodriguez, and then you have Max Holloway versus Josh Emmett. Whoever looks the best out of 3 out of the 4 of those guys, Max Holloway's probably not going to challenge for a championship in anywhere near future. As long as Volkanovski has the title, Max Holloway's not competing for it, unfortunately. So out of Yair, out of Arnold Allen, and out of Josh Emmett, out of those 3, whoever looks the best, they get the title shot versus Volk. And then the third fight, once they're both healthy, I think this is just a great fight in general. Brian Ortega and Calvin Kattar, both guys coming off of injuries, serious injuries at that, and then coming in, trying to put their name back on the map. I think that's a perfect fight. Obviously, that's going to be a lot later down the road. I haven't heard any details about how long Calvin Kattar will be out, but his injury did look pretty serious. It looks like a blown-out knee, so he's probably sidelined for a while. Brian Ortega is probably still going to be sidelined for a while, but I think that would be a really fun fight to see for both of them once they're able to come back. So, again, it's still kind of the featherweight division right now is just there's a traffic jam at the top. We don't really know where to go from here, especially with Volkanovski kind of moving on, because we could just leave it up to Volkanovski. You pick whichever one of the three you want, you get, and then the other two face each other. Whoever wins that one faces the winner of Volk and the other. But now we got Volk moving up, and it's kind of a cluster right now. It'll be interesting to see how the UFC is able to handle this logjam at the top of the featherweight division, though. But those are the three fights that I wanted to talk about from UFC Fight Night, Kattar versus Allen. Next up, I want to talk about Petr Yan potentially leaving the UFC. So a report came out from Daniel Cormier, I believe on his show DC and RC on ESPN, where he said that he's heard through the grapevine, basically, that Petr Yan might be leaving the UFC after the controversial decision loss to Sean O'Malley. I truly feel this would be one of the worst moves for Petr Yan's career that he could possibly make. I think it's a huge mistake. I think in reality he would probably lose a lot of respect. I talked about this fight with O'Malley last week, where a lot of people called this a robbery. While I think Petr Yan won that fight, I thought it was kind of clear that Petr Yan won that fight. That I could see why the judges gave the decision to Sean O'Malley. Yes, Petr Yan landed 6 takedowns. He didn't do anything with them. Sean O'Malley got right back up. Sean O'Malley outstruck Petr Yan by a big margin and significant strikes too. It was like 84 to like 58 or something like that, if I remember right off the top of my head. It was a very close fight. I thought Petr Yan won the fight, but I could see why the judges swayed it over to Sean O'Malley. This, to me, would not do a whole lot, especially because it's not like the judges are organization-based. They travel between... I was just watching Bellator on Saturday before the UFC event, and Sal Diamato is judging for Bellator too. They all judge for different organizations. They don't work for the UFC. So, I mean, it's not like you're avoiding judges, and I get Dana White not really. I guess he feels Dana White doesn't have his back, but it's like, what's Dana White supposed to do in that situation? There's really nothing Dana White can do in that post-fight press conference. And just because Dana White said it was a close fight, that he could have seen it go either way, I don't see that as being a reasonable reason to leave the UFC. I think that's kind of a joke if he does. I hope Petr Yan stays in the UFC because I think he's terrific. I think he's one of the best fighters on the planet. He showed that. He's shown that. He's a former champion. And the only people he's lost to as of recently is Aljamain Sterling and a disqualification, and then a controversial decision, and then to Sean O'Malley in a controversial decision. So it's not like he's getting blown out of the water. It's not like he's lost a step. He's just kind of being on the unlucky side of things. I think he should fight his way back in and do what he does best, and that's be one of the best fighters on the planet. He just needs to get some confidence back. I hope that this blows over and nothing real happens from it. But if not, I don't know how everybody's going to look at Petr Yan from here on out. But next up, I do want to talk about the Bellator versus Rizin event on New Year's Eve. I think I am just so excited for this. I'll be honest. I don't know a whole lot about Rizin, but regardless of how much I know, I think this is absolutely amazing for the entire world of MMA, not just those two organizations. To see a crossover event like this between two organizations that have at least a decent following is huge for MMA. To have the level of competition from Bellator is going into hostile environment. They're going overseas to I believe it's Japan. I could be wrong about that. To face some of Rizin's best is just awesome. I mean, from Bellator, we have a champion and Patricio Pitbull. We have a former champion, AJ McKee. And then we have 2 top 5 contenders in the bantamweight weight class for Bellator. Again, I don't know a whole lot about Rizin, so I don't really know much about the 4 that they're bringing to the table. I know that there's still one more fight to be announced for this event. But, I mean, I think this is a huge move for not only these two organizations, but just the whole world of MMA. I know I'll be tuned in on New Year's Eve. I think it's awesome, especially this is the only, at least out of the bigger / decently sized organizations, these are the only two going to be competing on New Year's Eve. UFC has no event on New Year's Eve. PFL will be done with their season by New Year's Eve. I think this is fantastic. I think it's genius. And I cannot wait for New Year's Eve to see how this goes. I think it's going to be a blast. But that's enough about other news. Let's get into some fight predictions. I have 4 fights from the Fight Night headlined by Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos that I'm going to be predicting. Starting off with what seems to be the first fight of the main card, Jailton Almeida taking on Maxim Grishin. A fight that was supposed to happen back in May. Grishin had to pull out, and still kind of a short notice fight because Almeida was supposed to fight Shamil Abdurrahimov back at UFC 280, but for the second time, Shamil pulled out of that fight. A big reason I wanted to talk about this fight is Jailton Almeida, though. I think he is one of the premier prospects in all of the UFC. I mean, this guy has 3 first-round finishes in his first 3 UFC bouts, all in different weight classes, per se. His first fight at light heavyweight, first round finish. Second fight, heavyweight, first round finish. Third fight, a 220-pound catchweight bout, first round finish. This guy is legit at whatever weight class you want him at. He is legitimately here to stay. He is going to be a problem in either one of those 2 light heavyweight or heavyweight divisions. I think he continues in this matchup. I'm going Jailton Almeida. First round TKO from ground and pound. Next fight, Tagir Ulanbekov taking on Nate Maness. 2 good flyweights trying to bounce back from tough losses. 2 very, very good fighters. Ulanbekov coming off of a controversial loss where there seemed to be some illegal glove grabbing where Tim Elliott was putting his fingers inside of Ulanbekov's gloves. So that was a very controversial fight. Elliott came out on top by decision, but a lot of people were kind of like, why was a point not taken? It was a really weird situation, really weird fight. Maness coming off a tough loss. He was actually up in bantamweight for this fight against Umar Nurmagomedov, who just flat out dominated him. Can't say too much because Umar Nurmagomedov is a legit prospect. He is going to continue climbing the rankings, and I think he's going to do it very quickly as well. So not going to hold too much against Nate Maness, especially considering he was moving up a weight class for that fight. Nate will be looking to avenge this loss against Umar's teammate, though. Tagir Ulanbekov is a part of Khabib's camp also. Ulanbekov both of these guys, as a matter of fact, are very talented grapplers, though Ulanbekov has kind of gone more striking as of recently. He is a very good striker, one of the best out of Khabib's whole camp. So it'll be interesting to see what their game plan is with Nate Maness, who is an amazing jiu-jitsu artist. But when you are a part of Khabib's camp, you do have a grappling expertise. You are arguably part of the best grappling camp in the entire world. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I am going to go with Ulanbekov in this fight, though. I think it's going to be far closer than the Umar Nurmagomedov-Nate Maness fight. But I do think Tagir Ulanbekov takes the fight by decision. Next up is the co-main event. Two ranked welterweights, two experienced welterweights. Neil Magny taking on Daniel Rodriguez. The veteran who is known for never turning down a fight. Neil Magny looking to avenge his loss to arguably the best prospect in all the UFC, Shavkat Rakhmonov, earlier this year, while Daniel Rodriguez looks to continue his recent rise in the ranks following his fourth straight win over Li Jingliang after that weird, crazy shuffle at UFC 279. Both guys are pretty well-rounded, which you would expect. Both guys are kind of veterans of the fight game. I wouldn't expect anything less from these two. I imagine Magny would be the one to initiate any sort of takedowns if the fight does go to the ground, because he is more comfortable on the ground, where Daniel Rodriguez definitely is more comfortable on the feet. I think this is going to be a very fun fight. I think it's going to be a very close fight. But I'm going with Daniel Rodriguez to edge out a decision victory over Neil Magny. And last but not least, the main event, a big matchup in the women's strawweight division. Marina Rodriguez taking on Amanda Lemos, the perennial top 5 contender, looking to win against yet another top 10 opponent, which would make it 5 in a row. All against top 10 opponents, some in the top 5. Her only loss in her career is to the current champ Carla Esparza and Marina Rodriguez. Amanda Lemos was on a huge rise through the rankings. She was shooting up left and right in these rankings before running into Jessica Andrade earlier this year. The former champ Amanda Lemos was just outmatched in this fight. She was not ready for a contender like Jessica Andrade quite yet. That's no disrespect to Amanda Lemos. I think she's a fantastic fighter. She was not ready for Jessica Andrade. She has since redeemed that loss with a submission victory over Michelle Waterson-Gomez back in July. Marina Rodriguez is a terrific striker, maybe the best striker in this division. Her and Rose Namajunas are kind of fighting for that slot, and has fairly good takedown defense, which will come in handy, as I imagine Amanda Lemos will try to get this fight to the ground. Amanda Lemos is also a good striker, but she's more of the well-rounded fighter with the expertise that Marina Rodriguez has on the feet. I definitely imagine Amanda Lemos at least attempting some takedowns in this fight. I think this is going to be a competitive fight, but I think Marina Rodriguez is on a mission to finally get the well-deserved title shot. I thought after this last fight, I believe her last, Yan Shannon, which she fought earlier this year at UFC 272, I believe it was, where this was her 4th straight win. It was her 2nd straight win against a top 5 opponent at the time. Mackenzie Dern has since dropped to number 6. But, I mean, I think if Marina Rodriguez wins this fight, I think that without a doubt she should get the winner of Yang Weili and Carla Esparza. I don't think there's any way around it. You get 5 straight wins against 5 top 10 opponents. I don't think you can keep delaying this title shot for Marina Rodriguez. I'm going Marina Rodriguez by decision and fair. I don't think it's going to be a complete domination, but I think it's going to be obvious that Marina Rodriguez won this fight. I don't think she's going to leave any doubt in any of the judges' minds that she deserved to win this fight. So, again, I'm going Jailton Almeida, first round TKO, Tagir Ulanbekov by decision, Daniel Rodriguez by decision, and Marina Rodriguez by decision. That is all I have for you this week. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Next week, we will be going over my reaction to UFC Fight Night, headlined by Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos. We'll also be doing predictions for the huge event, UFC 281, headlined by Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira, a heated kickboxing rivalry transferring over into MMA. Very excited for that. Also, Carla Esparza and Yang Wei Li for the title for the strawweight division. We also got Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier. There was a lot of big fights on this card. Frankie Edgar's retirement fight. The return of Dominic Reyes taking on Ryan Spann, Molly McCann, Aaron Blanchfield. Tons of great fights on that card. I'm very excited to give my predictions for that one. But until then, you can find me on Instagram at Monday Night Fight Talk. You can find me on Twitter at MN Fight Talk. Thank you all again for tuning in. You'll find me next week, same time, same place on YouTube for Monday Night Fight Talk.